I want to also, I was talking from an institutional standpoint of who within the court system, and we recognize that we are just part of that circle. We do have a partner outside of that circle. She too has promised she's going to stay with me for 10 years, and that's Ms. Belinda Dulin. Let me just say this. Let me say this. We have made the determination that the Dispute Resolution Center is the hub that we will partner with the court in peacemaking. The reason for that is manifold. First, it is administered and reports to the administrative arm of our Supreme Court, and we are part of a court system, and we take our direction and our guidance and our marching orders from them. Secondly, the Dispute Resolution Center has been around for 25 years in this community. Many of you have been involved with it. They know what this community is about, and they also know the needs very much. Third, those are all logical reasons. The real reason is Belinda Dulin. The real reason is Belinda Dulin. This is an enlightened soul. I was privileged to know her father-in-law, Mr. Joe Dulin. He was a real champion. And I know Mrs. Dulin is here today, and I told her that just this morning as we came in. These were real pioneers and real champions. We are honored, privileged, and lucky that we have their daughter-in-law to carry us with.
So we had a lot of questions from everyone, and we have a few minutes to answer them. So I think one of the things we talked about doing was the questions that we don't get to answer, we're going to send them out to you in some other form. Give us a little bit of time to write them out, to write out the answers as best we can. But I think we can start with a few questions, and maybe Linda, Kay, and I can each choose a question or two from our list to respond to. One of the questions on the abuse and neglect cases is, I can kind of consolidate this. How can a peacemaking court case, how can peacemaking court work when there's already a case open? And our circles evaluated beyond the agreement, and am I allowed to mention peacemaking in my reports? So I assume the question about peacemaking in reports probably came from a caseworker who's making reports. And the answer is absolutely yes, because peacemaking isn't going to take these cases, make these cases go away entirely. They won't go off the court docket until everyone has decided that it's time for reunification or termination or whatever is going to happen. But the peacemaking agreement that comes out of it comes back to the court, and it's approved by the court, and it's almost like a case, it becomes part of the case plan. So yes. And peacemaking works while the case is open. As Judge Connor said, can be referred at almost any stage. And whatever the issues are that are a problem on the case can be talked about in peacemaking. And yes, we will have an evaluation going on for the program.
So I have a couple questions, one regarding the facilitators, and there was also asked in a couple different ways, a question regarding doing this work outside of court cases and working with schools, so I'll try to answer both of those. I'll start with the facilitators. So this morning we have a number of facilitators from the Dispute Resolution Center here. If you could just raise your hand so people can know who you are. So you've sat in circles with some of the facilitators, and this is just a small number of people that is working with the Peacemaking Court this afternoon. Some more people will be here, and then Thursday and Friday, quite a large group of us will be together for training. So the Dispute Resolution Center's facilitators are, number one, members of the community. Number two, they volunteer their time. So they're community members who care about community members and who want to be a part of supporting them as they work towards their goal of reunification with their children. These peacemakers started out as mediators with the Dispute Resolution Center, and they've received 40 hours of training, so they come into the peacemaking process knowing how to be an appropriate neutral third party, understanding the boundaries of alternative dispute resolution as defined by our state Supreme Court, the State Court Administrative Office. As Judge Connor said, that's whom we report to. So we're just one of the programs that the state court has. In addition to that training, they have been trained. We have gone through some rigorous training to be peacemakers. This is not our first rodeo with Kay. We were with Kay and elders of the Little River Band tribe a little more than a year ago. So we spent about 7 or 8 days in training, really immersing ourselves into the grandfather's teachings, understanding the roots of all of this work, doing our own reading, and then understanding how to be a good circle keeper. This afternoon, we will start yet another cycle of training so that we can be appropriate and know how to apply these skills to the abuse and neglect docket. So we don't take it lightly. We're not just people at the corner who want to come in and enter into the lives of these individuals. We want to do it the right way in the most responsible way. So we spend a lot of time in training and development to be a peacemaker facilitator. Schoolwork, real quickly. Yes, the answer is yes. Do we do what we do with court cases, do we do with school children or with schools? The answer to that is yes. We spent a considerable amount of time at Ypsilanti High School, and one of our facilitators is over at the New Tech, doing just what we have learned here and what we've talked about here and experience with the students there. Most recently, we spent time training students and staff at Skyline. So when schools, in going forward, Pathways is very interested, and some other school districts are beginning to ring the phone. So the wonderful thing about that is that youth will have these tools in their hands. They will begin to behave and communicate differently with their peers, and hopefully they'll never be at the juvenile court. We have seen that. We have seen youth when things escalated, intensified, got to the place where police were ready to arrest on school grounds and go through this whole juvenile system. So we do know that if we can get these tools into their hands and work with them early, that they won't be a case. They won't be in the system, and that is the DRC's way of interrupting the school to prison pipeline.
So there's a question about how you deal with a person with mental illness in a circle. Our experience has been that the circle process actually really helps people with various kinds of challenges. So folks with developmental disabilities, folks with mental illness, find the sort of structure and predictability of the circle a space in which they're actually more likely to be able to participate productively in the process. So generally we're finding that it works better than other kinds of processes for people with those kinds of disabilities. I mean, there might be cases where it doesn't work. It's not always going to be fine, but we've been surprised. We've had a number of situations that we didn't know. We decided to try it. So my advice is that expect more than you think might be possible, that it's generally worth trying because we've seen a number of situations where people could function better there than they normally could in a group in terms of mental illness. One of the questions is, does peacemaking work the same for people of all races? And I think this raises a really key question. So first of all, you have to look at your whole structure in terms of how cases are chosen, because the whole referral process has to pay attention to this issue. The process itself, in various communities that I've worked in, different cities, we have found that people of color are more comfortable in the circle process than in court or in other kinds of processes, so that it is a space in which they feel more respected and feel treated more equally. A very dear friend that I did a lot of training with early in my work a decade ago, and she's African American, and she said circle was the only place in this country where she felt that she was equal. So it has the potential to really change dynamics in the space, but you have to be really careful about what's the process for who gets into circle and who do you engage from the community in terms of who else is in the circle. So it is an area where you need to keep paying attention all the time, because if you're part of the dominant culture like I am, you may not notice. And so you need some truth tellers among you who will be able to point out when you missed something completely. It remains a very alive question all the way through any kind of process. But what we do know is that in that space, people of color are more comfortable than they are in other kinds of processes. And so they're more likely to be able to be productive and to use it to help them in their lives. Balance of power, there are concerns about balance of power between the folks in the process and the agencies. And that is a very important question also to keep paying attention to, because even when you're trying to create a space where people have equal voice, people who've never had equal voice don't even know what you're trying to say to them when you tell them they have equal voice, right? They don't believe they could actually disagree with what the professional might be saying. So you have to work really hard at conveying that idea in the process, that we really want to hear your truth. If you think this plan isn't going to work for you, it's important for you to say so. So you have to work at that, but what you want is for those voices to come up, because what it means is you're not finished yet. You're not finished yet in making this plan. And ultimately, the workers have some power outside of the circle, but if those who are participating have a real commitment to consensus, then the workers will stay in the process with you as you work out what doesn't work for you. What else? Let's explain why that was included. What other ideas do you have for achieving the purpose that was trying to achieve, right? So it's a constant process of dialogue till you figure out. But it's going to be very important for the people who are keeping the circles, who are facilitating, to be watching for body language that might tell you that people are actually not, they've got something there, but they're not speaking it, right? And trying to work with the process so that it becomes safe enough for the families and the youth, because they will find it hard to actually believe that their voice could be equal, and they will be reluctant sometimes to say that they actually don't think that'll work. But you don't want people walking out having agreed to something they don't believe will work, and they're the one who needs to do it. So it's really important that you keep working with this and you keep working with this. And the commitment that we always have had in the projects I've worked with is that if the group can't come to consensus, it does revert to the power authority to make the decision. But that what happens in the circle will be by consensus. And the agreement has to be something everybody can live with. These things are, we're living in a world where all kinds of power operates that's not even visible. So this is very difficult to achieve, but that's what you're going to be aiming for, and you're going to be trying for it. And even if you don't achieve a full sense of equal voice, the circle will get you a lot further down that road than for instance, standing in court, because I would feel like I had no voice standing in court, right? And I'm a pretty highly empowered person in our culture. So you're moving down the road, the ideal being that everybody will feel they have equal voice, and you get as far down that road as you can, understanding that it's not going to be perfect.